Hello, my name's John Millington, and thank you very much for the invitation to talk today. Heather must have caught me at a bit of a weak moment when I agreed to do this. It's a little while since I've revisited some of my Nuffield work, but it's something that we are putting into practice on the farm, so we'll have a little skip through. I'm not exactly the most fluent of speakers, so you'll have to forgive me for referring to my notes. But we'll start off with who I am, and we'll see if we can just get this screen to share. Great. Well, what I'm certainly not is a communications guru. I'm not somebody who's spent a lifetime working in communications and has got a lot of theoretical stuff to put towards you. I am a dairy farmer, and I have been all my working career. We started off milking 80 cows with some beef cattle and some winter sheep and some arable ground. We now milk 600 cows. Those are 400 spring calving extended grazing cows that are yielding somewhere around 5,000 litres. They're Jersey Cross Friesians, and they receive about 600 kilos of corn in the year. The grazing season lasts from early February through till the end of November, given the right weather conditions. And we also milk 200 autumn calvers of the same breeding type, and they will be 7,000 litre cows from roughly a tonne and a half of corn. And that helps us to keep a level dairy with our milk going to a cheese producer. My passion when it comes to farming is very much along the pasture route. I love measuring and monitoring grass and making the most of the grassland and putting that grass through cows to produce milk at low cost of production. And this system came my way after visits to the Republic of Ireland, and then as part of a discussion group, we travelled to New Zealand to learn a bit more and try and find out the nuts and bolts of the system. It struck me from where we were before that the system offered the chance of less work, more profit, concentrating on jobs at times of the year, and building our assets by building cattle numbers within the business. And our farm suits it. We have a farm that's partly heavy red clay and partly sand and gravel. That means that some of it will grow and stay green virtually all summer, almost irrespective of the weather. And the other ground we can access early spring and late autumn. So that suits us down to the ground. I farm. I have a partner, Jancy, and I have 3 children. The youngest of which seems, Nathan, is very keen on farming. He's now 17 and looking as if he's going to come home, which is fantastic. And we're concentrating on dairy going forward. We are tenant farmers. We farm around 700 acres. And we are right in the English Midlands. If you know your English geography, we're halfway between Manchester and Birmingham. And that's a really good place to be in terms of grassland and milking cows in the UK. Having got to enjoy travel and learn from my travelling experiences, it was kind of a natural progression to go towards Nuffield. So the challenge of learning something new was very attractive to me. And I had a really good piece of advice from a friend called Tom Phillips, who's a senior lecturer at Melbourne University. And he said, either concentrate on something in your business that you're good at and become world class, or look at something and be real with yourself as to what you're poor at and become better at it. And hopefully it won't be any longer what's holding your business back. So after one early staff meeting, my partner Jan said to me, why do you tell the boys what they don't need to know, and yet sometimes you're reluctant to tell them actually what they do need to know to make their job easier? And after initial denial, which I guess is something we'll return back to in a minute, there was a realization that actually this was probably a decent study topic because it was a real weakness of mine. Actually, the ability to talk to the guys and get the best out of them. When I started off with 80 cows, I worked alongside one guy And then it's very easy to work because you show people what you want them to do, how you want them to do it. Actually, the verbal side of communication is very minimal. As the business grow to 150 cows with 2 men, and you show and you tell, and actually it's not that inefficient if you have to tell twice, because you're only working with 2 guys. But as you get to 300, 400 and more cows, actually that becomes very ineffective, and therefore you need a more structured approach. And with my poor negotiation and poor communication skills in the past, there was a period of time where management was pretty much by do what I meant rather than actually do what I said, because I wasn't very good at actually explaining myself and having the skills and the techniques to get my message across properly. And some of the journey that we went on is what I'm hopefully going to go through. So what is the purpose of us employing staff? Yes, it's to shift the work, and it's to drive a good economic return, but it's also about retaining good staff and growing people to help them to reach their potential. I do enjoy teaching. My teaching has mostly been with children, in the fact that I'm a junior cricket coach, although not anymore, something I've not found time for the last couple of years, but I took my son and his age group through 4 or 5 years of cricket coaching, got a huge amount out of that, and actually realised that it was helping these young lads realise their potential and see them getting better year on year. That was what was really driving my interest to keep doing it. So the cricket coaching, I got a lot of fun out of, and it's something that I still miss now, but I still do play, and we still play in the same team or something like that, and that's great fun. We're finding in the UK that it's more and more difficult to find people to work on dairy farms. And that's despite the fact that the number of dairy farms has dropped from 30-odd thousand to less than 10,000 in the last 25 years. And we've got 60-odd million people living in the UK. So at a time when we've got rising unemployment, limited job security with 0-hour contracts, we don't seem to attract people into our industry. And it really does make you wonder whether we're really that poor at letting people know what the dairy job can be. It's provided lots of opportunity for me and my family, and it continues to do so for many families that I know around and people that work in those businesses, and especially with those guys that are being allowed to build their assets within the business. It's a privileged place to work in terms of the space and the environment that we work in, and we're our own bosses, we manage our own time, and there's huge value in that. And I think we've really got a good story to tell, and there are a lot of people out there who don't realise that they are very good potential farm staff, but they just don't think about where we are. So maybe we're not great at getting that story out, and yet as farmers we're very good at talking to each other. We kind of talk our own language, but we lack the sort of confidence to go and talk to other people. We're very good at sharing information at discussion groups and evening meetings, and actually at conferences like this, it's you often learn as much in the either at the coffee stall or the bar later on, talking to other farmers, and you actually do listen to some of the presentations because people are generally very open with information, and that's something we should be very proud of. I'm a member of local discussion group, and I've got a lot out of that, a lot of growth through knowledge transfer. There are 17 businesses in our group, and actually we often say that the answer is in the room because somebody's usually gone through the same problem that we're facing. And our herdsmen also have a herdsmen's group, which is related and gives them the same opportunities to have their own resource, to have a monthly meeting throughout the year to which they set the agenda as to what the topics they want to discuss are, who the speakers are, and as employers, we fund that discussion group for those guys. It gives them a resource of people they know, have got to know really well and can trust. And given that most of the meetings are held on one of the members' farms, they actually know the farm, they know the challenges, and they know the resources available. So the discussion groups are very valuable in our business. When I started looking at trying to improve the way that we communicate, I ran into a guy called Adrian van Bisterveld in New Zealand. And he actually took me down a line I wasn't expecting to travel. And the first thing he said to me, you have to do the right things to the right business. And what he was getting at is there's no point getting people to try and talk and to listen to what they've got to say if they don't feel free to say what they feel. So he took me on a little journey through governance, business governance. And governance is defined by Sir Adrian Cadbury as the system by which businesses and organisations are directed and controlled. And that relies on us as managers to have a system that works and is consistent for our people to understand. It relies on structural thinking, which helps us make sensible decisions in a timely manner. And it applies to all businesses, not just us as a farm business or big corporations. It applies even to the one-man builder or decorator. You have to have a system that works. And as your business grows, you move away from that day to day and you become a governor within your own business. And your time is devoted to where the business is going. It's about, for us, it's a little bit towards working towards goals, and how fast we want to get there and what we must do to make it happen. The team that we need to have around us, how we get the best out of those people, as well as knowing budgets and having our loans in good order and making use of the resources we've got on the farm. So there are 4 pillars of governance, and if I share the screen again, excuse me for a moment. Oh, this was just a little diversion to show that Nuffield isn't all about hard work. There is some little diversions along the way. So to go to a vineyard that happens to be run by an ex-rugby New Zealand All Black was a jolly good day out. So it's more than just work. So the pillars of governance, there are 4. The strategic thinking, which is about purpose and being realistic. And business strategy. There is accountability, which is all about delivering results, and you knowing what looks like with knowing what your KPIs are and being able to monitor them. In our business, in our grazing business, we have 2 very basic KPIs which actually drive our business profitability. One is the tons of dry matter of grass per hectare that we grow, because that sets our stocking rates. And the second is our 6-week in-calf rate. So in our service period, it's how many cows we get in calf in the first 6 weeks, and our target is 90% in 6 weeks, and that drives our days in milk. So if we can set a high stocking rate and have those cows in milk for a long time, that drives our milk output, and that drives our business. So those are our KPIs. We have compliance issues. That is another pillar of governance. That they might be environmental things that you have to comply with. It's about the legal duties. It's about the financial discipline and the financial rigor within your business. It's about the risks that you're taking that are measured risks or risks that you want to take out of your business. And the final one, which is one that really we're going to concentrate on, which is culture. What rules is your business going to operate by? And one of the most important elements of this is concentration on your internal and external working relations, whether that be when you last sent your bank manager an update of your business financial position, whether he's asked for it or not, or whether when you last sent a thank you to your accountant or a supplier. We are quite pointed here at making sure that we do a Christmas delivery to our tyre repairers. So if we've got a flat to come out and repair a tractor tyre, and he's got two farms to go to at 4:30 in the afternoon, maybe he'll remember who gave them the box of chocolates at Christmas. Those sort of things are just good at working with your external partners. If I just click on. when I went to Lincoln University, which is where Adrian was, we had a really good day. And the governance side of things was somewhere I didn't really expect to go, but we went through it really, and it started to make things make sense. We spend more time at work than often we do with our spouse and with the people that we work with. And so it's really important to make work a place to be enjoyed. And especially at this time when we've got COVID happening. We're in lockdown situation here in the UK at the moment. So often we employ, as farmers, we employ single young men that are quite driven, that sometimes live alone. They're not allowed any socialising at the moment. So actually it's really important for their mental health when the major killer of males under 35-year-old is suicide. Actually that we make fun a really work a really fun place to be. And we can do that by looking at 3 Ps. The business is profitable, so you can supply them with good resources. Environmentally, you're up to speed, so that actually it's a good place to work. And the people in the business are in a good frame of mind. And those 3 things together hopefully will make you a sustainable business and a place that is actually going to be a place to work. So that's really all about the framework of getting it to be a place that is reliable to work in. From there, we have to decide how we're going to drive our culture and what the culture is going to look like. And there are 2 ways you can look at this, I think, in terms of either the whole way you run your business, or in terms of even just individual roles and jobs within your business, and they're not necessarily exclusive. The first is to have a prescriptive way of working, which is perhaps best described as being able to define to people what they are allowed to do. So you are telling them precisely what they can do. It's a way of working that usually requires several protocols, whether they are one for each and every job or just the main jobs on the farm. But it's a way that means that people can sign off what they've done because they know that it's being done to the way that the farm owner wants it to be done. This limits expression because they are a little bit straitjacketed in how they can do it. It reduces opportunity to find better ways of working because you're pretty prescriptive in what you're doing, but it does minimize the risk to the business because you know it's going to be the way that you want it done. The other way to do it is using more a coaching method, which is the way that we have we've decided to move. So you almost think of it as a team sport, and it's very much an idea of laying down boundaries of what people can't do, what they're not allowed to do. So you define the boundaries within your business of ethical ways of working, how you treat your animals, those sort of things, how you talk to people, the environmental things that are not allowed, such as spreading and spraying within 10-meter boundaries of watercourses, those such things. And it's about integrity, about how you work with your people. It needs very clear goals. You need to be able to talk to your staff about actually what, as a farm, you're trying to achieve. And if you allow people to have a bit more adaptability within the system and have a system that is based on management by results rather than methodology, you need fewer protocols, maybe the odd protocol on a laminated sheet against a wall rather than a file full of protocols that maybe sit on a desk. In this system, there is more risk because somebody might do something that isn't the way that you would do it, and the results might not be quite as you'd like them to be. So in that case, you have to be able to give people responsibility, and they have to take responsibility for their actions. But equally, if things turn out really well, you have to be able to give credit as well and adopt a new way of working. this hopefully will give them greater personal development and motivation to work hard for you in the future. We almost think of it as the team sport, in the fact that the boundaries are the rules of the game. They tell you what you're not allowed to do. The coach sets the goals as how he wants the team to play and what we're trying to achieve, but the players are allowed to play on instinct and communicate with each other in a way that gets a good team result. And that's the route we tend to go for most of the things we do. There are one or two things, such as the 6-week in-car freight and service, which we're pretty protocol driven. But the rest of what we do, we tend to use a more coaching type way of working. So to make this work and to make people safe in the place in which they work and to give them confidence, we think it's important to clearly define the roles and responsibilities of everybody that works in our business. We're going through a process at the moment of moving from 2 units, which are 2.5, 3 miles apart, back onto 1 unit, which is growing. So there's been a bit of movement of land at the moment. And to mix those 2 teams together, we're very much going through the process now of making sure that everybody knows well in advance of the final move date, which is next March, exactly what everybody's role is going to be, so that the guys can work together, knowing fully that they're not going to have each other's toes stepped on, that they'll be working very much together. So we're defining the responsibility for tasks. They'll do tasks together, but somebody will have the final responsibility and will lead certain tasks. And then we'll have results and expectations that we have of them pretty clearly explained. And then we'll try and explain to them as well as we can what good looks like, actually what the outcome actually physically looks like, to help them visualize what they're working towards. And another thing we say to our guys occasionally is actually, if we think about what we do as being our own customer, it helps us to drive good work. Because if you were to go out as a young stock manager and go out and buy 100 heifers and 3 of them turned up dead, you wouldn't be terribly happy. So actually, you need to set expectations as to what you think is a good result. So in effect, what we've done by roles and responsibilities and governance is create a safe place for people to communicate, because they know what their role is within the business, and from there on we can try and develop our communication skills. Part of my sporting life playing cricket has involved several catastrophes in the yes, no, sorry, maybe, and return to the pavilion, where we should perhaps be running 2 or 3 and we run 1.5. And so communication can be a bit of a disaster in sport as well as everything else. And I've certainly started from a low base and have plenty of disasters to report. We've got to spend some time getting to know our staff, and it's actually letting people know that you actually care about them, that hopefully helps them stay in your business, and hopefully they want to work for you. So we do spend time talking to our people, especially in our slack periods. A seasonal calving pattern does give us sometimes the year when we are quieter, and it's things like remembering their spouses' names and birthdays, whether they've got any children, what their children's names are, and what their pets are. Things like that actually make people realise that actually you care about them, you're interested in them, and that's really key. And the other thing that's always good to know is why they work for you. Why do they work for you and not the neighbour or somebody down the road or in a business in the city or in the local town? Is it about the opportunity that you provide? Is it about the challenge they get working for you? Is it just about the pound sterling? Is it about the quality of the house that you're offering, the site of the house, the view they get, the extra things that you perhaps throw in, like pony paddock for the wife's horse? Is it about the security that you offer them because they feel that their job is secure because you know what they want? Or is it because you've got some sort of profile and they like working for you because it gives them some sort of reputation and standing in the community? There are all sorts of things, but it is worth just thinking about what it is that you offer to your people, and then which part of that actually drives them, and helping to understand why they work for you. We also have to think a little bit about the sort of people that we recruit in the first place. And for us, we're always looking for people with an analytical mind, people with a certain scientific knowledge background. That I think on a farm is a very good starting point. And we like to see examples of team working, whether that be within work or outside of work, because especially in remote locations, which some farms can be, actually local support and community support is what drives teams forward. A problem is usually solved using the skills of everybody that's in it. So if a problem is really hard, if your guys are used to working a team and supporting each other, they will often come to the right result. And it is about support. Like, again, I take you back to a sporting analogy, having played cricket and rugby for quite a long time. When you're playing rugby, if the guy next to you is having a bad day, you don't bawl him out, you run a bit harder, you cover for him, because you know that someday it's going to be your turn to have a bad day, and that's what you want them to do when you're not being on your game, so to speak. So how do you make some of this work? Here we hold staff meetings that aren't always regular. It's not, I don't think regularity of staff meeting is really important, but I do believe it's important to have a meeting when you've got something to say, or when they've got something to say. So our staff meetings happen with an agenda, which we often encourage staff to have an input into. So an agenda is set, we try and stick to it. It's important as the business owner to turn up to that meeting on time, because it's not important to you. Why should it be important to them? You have to have a degree of professionalism if you're going to run the meetings, do them properly. It's always good, I think, to start a meeting with the sunny glasses on. The choice is to actually be positive. What went well last week? What did we get some good results for? Who did something above and beyond what we'd normally expect? So it's always good to review last week's work and start with something that's really good. It's kind of a who, what, where and when type approach to what happened last week and what was good, and then maybe what wasn't so good. That is a learning experience for some, all of us. Try and keep meetings to an hour here, an hour max. I think it's really difficult for guys that aren't used to sitting and talking and concentrating for an hour to concentrate for much longer than that. And I think sort of it gets hard work for us too sometimes. Venue for our meetings will often change depending on its formality. We're talking about looking at our 6-week in-calf protocols or 6-week in-calf service practices going forward. It'll often be down in the yard, around the cows. If it's a health and safety meeting, it'll be the most formal place we can find, whether it's around the kitchen table or with a professional in place as well. So the formality of the meeting has to reflect the importance of it in terms of how vital it is for them to stick on board. And in our group meetings, definitely no one-to-one grievance discussions, no grievances raised. They should only ever be done on a one-to-one. When we started doing farm meetings, big learning lesson from the first couple of meetings, I was so concentrated on what I was trying to do in terms of run the meeting and what I was got to try and say, completely forgot to listen. So there were answers that came back that were really good, I'm sure, but because I was too concentrated on what I was trying to say, yeah, in one ear, out the other. And so you sit down an hour later and gone, who said what? And it's really not all use. So very much a case of going into these meetings, being prepared to let almost the meeting go where they want to within the agenda, but let the people that work for you make their points, and actually, if you're the sort of person that needs to make notes, do it that way. Over time, we've become slightly better at that. I've become slightly better at that. And it's now a good way of finding out who the more or the less confident members of the staff are when they are talking about particular issues. And it's also very good at finding out where the training need is. And it's also an opportunity within those meetings providing training, or whether one of the recent ones we did, a meeting was about the three-leaf growth stage and grazing at the right time. I have had periods where I've sent members of staff perhaps a lot of information on emails, and almost to the point where there's been too much information, and that kind of turns the guys off after a while. They don't read them properly. They don't really take the information in, and perhaps provides a bit of anxiety when I'm talking to them about what was in the email and they haven't really read it. So we've gone away from that. Actually, I think if you can provide too much information in a way that they're not used to dealing with. We try and set a weekly plan. It doesn't always come to fruition. But one of the guys I was working with in New Zealand when I went over there said to me that not many people actually turn up to work every day in a happy state of mind if they don't know what they're going to be doing. It does help if people have got some sort of structure going forward so that they can do a bit of planning on their own. And that's where within our business, over a period of several years, we've written a farm business manual. So there's always a reference point for which the guys can have a look as to what's coming up. It's a monthly farm business manual with cow jobs, general farm jobs, grassland jobs, and other jobs, all listed, what needs to be done each month for our system. And that helps them see what's coming up. You can do the same with SOPs, you can do it with an IT system, but ours actually is a written farm manual. So that's kind of staff meetings and how we run those. Sometimes I get a phone call from a member of staff, and often if it's a member of staff on the second unit, I have to be really careful to make sure that I give them plenty of time, because you haven't got one issue when somebody rings you up with a problem, you've actually got two. The first is the problem itself and trying to find a suitable answer between you, whether that's a matter of resources or whether it's something that can be done on farm at the time. That depends on the issue. But not only have you got to sort that issue out to a sensible solution, you've also got to sort the headspace out of the guy or the lady that's reporting the issue to you. Because if you can leave them in a clear state of mind and with a calm way of thinking, so they can get on with the rest of their day, they're more likely to solve their own problems going forward. You're less likely to get another 5 or 6 phone calls that day. And actually then I can get on with my agenda for the day rather than having several more phone calls during the day. So it's important when you answer the phone to somebody who works for you to give them time to explain. And actually, especially if you've got somebody with you when the phone goes, don't go, oh bloody hell, not again. That is not the way to answer the phone, because the guy next to you is going to go, well, does he act like that when I pick the phone? So it's about the way you react and talk to people. And we've learned that the hard way over a period of time. Our first manager of our away farm stayed with us for a couple of years. And then through what he perceived as lack of support, he moved on. So learned the hard way, now try and do it a bit better. One of the most difficult things when you're dealing with people is dealing with change management. Excuse me. Routine is comfortable for all of us. We do things on a regular basis. It becomes very easy just to slip from day to day. So if you're going to get change accepted, you need to create the right atmosphere to do that. And you need to explain the motivation of why you want the change. And that's another lesson that I learned while I was in New Zealand from, actually in Denmark, I tell a lie, from a lady called Suzanne Paystrup. It's very important if you introduce a change that when you get some people who rail against it, you don't take it personally, because actually it's not about their personality. It's not about them being difficult people. It's actually about the shock that you get when somebody first initiates or suggests a major change to a business. The first reaction is often, we can't do that, because we don't know how to do it. There's usually a focus on the past, maybe even a refusal to hear. So you have to be really clear as to why the motivation for that change is. Excuse me. And then there's a second stage to react to change management, and that's there's like to be a reaction after that shock, which is something along the lines of, we tried that before and it didn't work, which is subconsciously them trying to say, I'm going to convince you that you're wrong, and actually what we're doing now is comfortable and works well. And this is when, as a manager of the business, I have to be, I have to listen, give them time to express their feelings, and just talk to them gently about why it is, but firmly, why it is that it needs to happen, what it will provide to our business. It's about giving them time to express perhaps any blame or anxiety, because they don't know quite how it's going to affect them in the future. And if you can discuss with them their feelings then, actually it makes life a lot easier going forward, because eventually they'll get to an adapt stage, which is, if we changed our way of working, maybe it could work. Maybe things are different now to how it was before. And that's the time when you detect that sort of reaction that you've really got to push and represent the plan with any adaptations that you think you need to make or are good to make from suggestions that have come up. Emphasize the short-term wins, but really press. That's the time to get the job done. And at the end, when they've accepted it, which is, how can I help make this work? It's about pulling together, emphasizing the long-term wins, and thanking those that actually helped you get there. Once the thing's in place, actually everybody will have helped to some degree, and it's thanking them for coming along with you. And people will go through this process at different speeds. And it's waiting for people to be ready to move to that third stage that gains you trust and help you in the future. Excuse me. And the reaction to change is very difficult to predict. Who will embrace it? Who will reject it? Very difficult to predict in advance. But what you can do, and what I can try and do, is try and control my reaction to their reaction. So I can control how I talk to them. Farmers in general like to be in control. We're in control of our businesses. We like to control a lot that goes on around us. But actually sometimes we're not very good at being in control of ourselves. I know occasionally I have moments where I blow up and almost always regret it. So actually the more we can be in control of ourselves and we can control our reaction to their reaction, the more likely we are to instill in the people that work for us that actually we can tackle any problem here, because the guy at the top, the lady at the top, doesn't panic, doesn't lose their rag when there's a problem, actually finds a way through it. So in the future, when we get any major problems, we can cope as a team and we'll get through it. So I suppose next we come to reactions to a mistake. And if I've reacted to somebody's mistake who's made a first mistake and an honest mistake, if I react in the wrong way, if I do blow my top, and I have done it in the past, that has a major effect on people. It has a major effect on their confidence going forward. Whereby if you can sit down and talk to people and get them to explain why the mistake was made, but support them and be positive in the way it reacts, they know in the future you've got their back and they will try and exceed my expectations, and that's great. And there's lots of different ways of talking to people. One of them that I've come across is a bit extraordinary, but I thought it was worth showing. And it was on a farm in New Zealand, run by Kim and Ollie Gibbard. They run a large unit on Maori land that works on a system based on Kaitiakitanga, which is based on people and resources, and it's all about honesty, communication, grass and water, and it's a grazing-based system. And that all works really well, and it looks really good. But behind Ollie and Kim, you'll see their $5 board. And this is a really good way for Ollie to run feedback. And this is really emphasizing the feedback that he gives to his staff. Now, on this $5 board, these are mistakes that people have made during the season in red. The first time you make such a mistake, and these are mostly mistakes which have affected other people in his business, you get charged $5. If you repeat that mistake, it doubles to a $10 fine. And the blue on the board is what you've done that exceeded their expectations or was really helpful to somebody else. Now, this system worked really well for Ollie, but Ollie was a really larger than life character. In fact, some might say he'd make a Texan oil magnet look as if he was somewhat shy and retiring. And it's a system I'm sure I couldn't get to work on my farm. But what it does say to me is actually, if you've got a system that works for you, it doesn't really matter how unorthodox it is. If it works for you and it works for your people, don't let anybody tell you it's wrong, because actually, if it's working, don't change it. And it's also important that we admit our own mistakes, and that I admit my mistakes, and I actually go out to the boys and say, look, guys, I got it wrong. Because if you're prepared, if I'm prepared to say that, I'm more likely to get the guys to come to me and say, I got it wrong when they made a mistake. Because if I try and hide or not admit my mistakes, that's the culture you're developing within the business. We come next onto non-verbal communication. Well, communication isn't just about words and data; it's also about meanings and feelings. And actually, that's what people remember most, is when you hurt them, or when that's my staff, have an effect on me. Non-verbal communication, there are three kinds of yes when people answer a question. One is, yes, I will do it. And they tend to be very clear and obvious when you look at people. There's also another yes, especially in young, enthusiastic people who are willing and trying to impress and trying to get on. And it's a yes, but you know underneath, by the fact that they walk away and look at the floor, it's a yes, I didn't understand, but I still said yes and I walked away. And the third is a yes, but I won't do it. And those are the people who say yes and then they go and do something else. And you can tell that as well as they shuffle their feet as they disappear. So by looking at people's body language, you can tell actually which one of those yeses you get, and you need to be able to read the difference. When I was talking to a guy called Mike Trubshaw in New Zealand, he told me about the ute test, which is when he's interviewing somebody, he'll get in his utility vehicle and he'll drive up to a closed gate. And if you're not half out of your seat with the door open and the seatbelt off before the vehicle comes to a stop, you're not going to get the job, because that told him everything he needed to know about you. And I also saw it in a cafe when I was in America, in the fact that I was eating lunch and the two managers came in together. One of them picked up a handful of dirty crockery off a table that had just been vacated and took the kitchen with him and went to talk to staff. The other guy walked straight through the restaurant and went to talk to the staff, and the one got a lot more warm welcome than the other one. So actually, knowing what's important to people and helping people's day along without having to say anything, just doing something simple makes a big difference. And with us as dairy farmers, the stockmen that tend to work for us, they're used to non-challenging dialogue because they're talking to their cattle all the time. They're talking to their animals. In fact, they'd rather talk to their animals than they would talk to us most of the time. And they pick up non-verbal signals very acutely. Indeed, they're trained to it, and we train them to do it. So it's very important when you're talking to stockmen, people like that, that you give them time to express their views. They perhaps won't be terribly efficient with words. One of my friends has got a really good way of expressing it. He says, don't step on their line. Keep your mouth shut. Wait for them to say what they actually mean to say, because they'll say it in a different way to perhaps you would if you'd finished a sentence for them. And when you talk to these people who are fantastic at working with animals and working with people, actually you need to be really attentive with your eyes and your ears. As my mother always used to put it, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Make sure you use them in those proportions. Excuse me. And when you've learnt, when I've learnt some of the things that we've picked up on the way through, I'm still a long way from being an excellent communicator. I'm not the communications guru that maybe one day one might aspire to be to. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But actually, once you've learned the skills, talking to people that work for you on your farm, actually, communication is a transferable skill. And actually, being better at communicating with the people, and the process that I've been through has actually made life a bit easier, talking to the people who are the most important people, which are family, because it's a really powerful tool to know that there's somebody else in the fight with you, who wants you to succeed. And if you can actually talk to that person, it actually makes life a lot easier. Haven't always been good at that. Maybe still aren't terribly good at it, but at least I'm better than I was. And then you can get on to equally important family discussions such as succession and things like that, without necessarily treading on eggshells and upsetting people. When I grew up as a child working with my dad, I could go out and work for an hour and feed the calves, and the job was done within an hour. And it was easy to achieve a sense of achievement because you've done the job and you've done it well. It's not so easy for our children now, because they're maybe working out there with foreign staff. Calf feeding might take 3 or 4 hours. They haven't got the stamina or the will to want to do that. So it's much more important now that we can talk on a one-to-one basis with our children about what the jobs are, how we make it work, why things are important, because actually they can't experience it in the same way that I did when I was a child. And communicating with people to keep them within your business actually makes sense for your wallet too. There's some work done in New Zealand by Dexel that says it costs roughly 1.3 times the wage of that person to replace them by the time you've got reduced productivity as a result of mistakes made by a new person, by the training need and the training cost to get that person up to speed, by the time it takes you as a manager to actually advertise, interview, recruit, and then the time that you then spend communicating with them as they get to learn the farm. It's 1.3 times the wage of that job. So it's worth taking the time to solve issues rather than reaching the point of no return, so that people want to leave your business. Of course, there are good times when people leave your business because they're going on to bigger and better things. And we enjoy taking people from new entrants and giving them more skills to be able to move on at a later date if they want to. But there is a real cost to replacing a member of staff, and a much greater cost to replacing a member of the family. So to conclude, if I can just get back here, it is, as Juan Quesada, a Mexican working in a business in America, said, it is realizing the potential of others that drives his passion. And he's actually seen people progressing, and actually the team progressing and making the place to work better, and with more fun. That actually makes things a lot more enjoyable to work through. And I completely agree with him when it comes to the cricket coaching. Actually, it's about seeing the guys progress. Off-site staff are a slightly different kettle of fish. There are some things there that you perhaps need to, I've needed to learn as we were working with a second unit. And it's the feedback that was always the important thing with those guys, setting the expectations and the feedback, and knowing about a problem early. So finally, it's really important to be clear on your motive when you want to implement a change, and you have to be really clear in your message. And sometimes the best way of being clear in your message is getting the guys to actually repeat back to you what actually you meant, because I don't always get my words in the right order, and sometimes I have to get the guy to say, well, actually, what have I asked you to do? And that's when it's important, when it really matters that they get it right. Repeating it back to you is always good. If you get the expectations right, and you set up the place so the guys want to work hard and they want to exceed those expectations, that's good. Yeah, control ourselves. And if somebody's really good in your business, maybe we have to make the job slightly different for them. And remember, actually, I have to remember sometimes to get out of the day-to-day work and use some time to become more of a governor, and make sure that my business is more organized than it is. And the ways we can get to some of those stages are with roles and responsibilities, the way we run our meetings, having a reference point, having people so that they do know what they're going to do when they turn up to work this week, and having a really good team, not only of the people that work with you, also the people that work for you, your professionals. And then eventually, as you get more confident, as I've got more confident, we've been able to do some things where we've been able to get the public on farm. We work with the Country Trust, who are a group that organised to get underprivileged city kids out onto farms, trying to get them to meet farmers and meet farming. And last year we went with and did an open farm Sunday where we had 900 people on the farm in the day, but to show the local town what we do. And that's something before the Nuffield experience, pulling me up by my bootstraps from the very bottom of the communication ladder, I wouldn't have dreamed of doing. So that's I think quite a nice place to stop, because that's where our story finishes at the moment. We are just about to have a major change in our business, coming back to one unit, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these things that we've described, certainly about roles and responsibility, follow through for the guys that are working for us. I hope there's something in there that you found of value. And as I said before, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you.